As you probably noted, I ran out of time and I had to put this in part 2 of the video. So I started there with diplomatic powers. The president can make treaties with other countries, but the Senate must approve it with a 2/3 majority. I have an example shown here of another thing that the president can do. The president can ask Congress to go to war. On December 7th, 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and President FDR went to Congress and said that this is a date which will live in infamy, which means we will always remember it and that we need to act. And he convinced Congress unanimously to go to war with Japan, and so we did. All right. The president also has military powers. He's in charge of all 5 branches of the military, from the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, and the Air Force. And he can call up troops at any time. President Donald Trump did this with the National Guard in the 2018 hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Another famous call up of troops by a president was by Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1957 in Little Rock, Arkansas. As you can see in this picture here, the National Guard had to be called in Arkansas to integrate or desegregate schools. Days before, a white crowd stopped 9 African American students, known as the Little Rock Nine, from entering that school. And Eisenhower said, that's it. And he got the troops in there to get them to join that school. Excuse me. Fourth, there's legislative and judicial power that the president has as well. Remember, this all has to do with the checks and balances where each branch can check one another. Okay? Legislative power means that the president can suggest laws, and he can also veto laws passed by Congress. Again, that checks and balances. One of the most famous recent legislation pieces by a president was Obamacare. President Obama, during his terms of service for our country, had the idea that he wanted to make healthcare really affordable. I can tell you that healthcare is extremely expensive. I spend thousands of dollars as an American and a husband and a dad for my family to have safe and affordable healthcare. So it's not free, it's expensive, and Obama tried to make it more affordable for everybody that way. We can't forget that a president can also veto any law that he does not like, and this has happened several times in our country's history. The president also has judicial power, and a great example here is that the president can check the powers of the judicial branch, which interprets the laws. The judicial power may be something like a pardon, a reprieve, or a commutation. In either of those cases, the president has the power to reduce, move, or delay, or even completely forgive somebody's punishment. A famous example of this is Richard M. Nixon through the Watergate scandal. We have discussed how he was withholding tapes from getting to the Justice Department and trying to cover up his involvement in a burglary of the Democratic National Convention, which was held at the Watergate Hotel. So because he held those tapes, he was basically involved in a crime, and he would not release those to the public. So he was impeached, and he probably would have been thrown out of office had he not resigned. However, the point is that the most famous pardon in probably our history is of Richard Nixon, of his crimes. His vice president, Gerald Ford, pardoned him immediately after he took office, and Nixon did not have to go to jail for his actions. All right, now we're going to be back up at the top of the page here, more powers of the president, and we're going to go through these very quickly, and then we'll talk briefly about your impeachment project, okay? So we have 5 roles: chief of state, chief executive economic planner, chief legislator, chief diplomat, and commander-in-chief. I think the easiest one, no-brainer here, is that commander-in-chief would go with military power. Okay, chief diplomat should go with diplomatic power. Duh. Chief legislator should go with lawmaking and judicial power. Chief economic planner should go with executive power. It's like managing a company. Chief executive should also go with that, right? And the chief of state should be going with B, diplomatic power. because as chief of state, you're in charge of foreign policy and